If you're into true scary stories and true crime, make sure to subscribe to the channel for new videos every week. Recently, I was taking a train home around 11 p.m. and just scrolling on my phone. When I got near my stop, I looked up and noticed a man looking at me. He looked and dressed normal, had a neutral expression on his face, and looked away the moment after we made eye contact. I don't know how else to explain it. I just knew he was a bad person who had bad intentions. It was like all of his energy was directed towards me. And although he was trying to look casual, I knew he was playing it off and paying way too much close attention to me, almost sizing me up. I knew he was going to try something. So I put away my phone, got a better grip on my bag, and tried to look neutral and bored as my stop approached. When the doors opened, I sat there a bit too long to see if he was getting off, and he didn't. I then quickly stood up and exited the train. He suddenly jumps up and gets off the train as well, just before the doors close, like he just remembered it's his stop. He walks a few steps ahead of me, walking towards the exit stairs. I walk behind him slowly, like comically slow. He slows down his gait too. I know he wants me to pass him so he can sneak up on me, but I want to keep an eye on him. Finally, I decide I'd rather him pass me than be alone in a long, empty subway tunnel at night with him. So I quickly pass out of arm's reach, and he follows me up the stairs. Even though he's acting casual, I can still feel his energy pointed at me, if that makes sense. I get to the top of the stairs and start walking towards the exit. He's a couple steps behind me at this point. Although there's subway employees here, once I leave the subway, it'll be just me and him on the street, in my not very busy neighborhood. I know he's following me, and I don't want him to know where I live, so I suddenly stop, turn around, and look straight at him. He also suddenly stops, gazing up at the ceiling all innocent, and after a second, goes back down the other set of subway stairs, which will take him in the opposite direction he had been traveling. So either he suddenly realized he was totally lost, or he realized I wasn't going to let him rob me, or worse. I waited there for a few seconds to make sure he was really going back downstairs, and just before he hit the platform, he looked up at me and gave me a sinister look. His veil of casual dropped completely, and he looked up at me with hatred. I actually get chills thinking about it. I don't know what his plans were for that evening, but I messed him up, and he hated me for it. I waited a few seconds on the exit stairs to make sure he wasn't coming after me, and then I ran home. I checked behind me the whole way. The worst part about all of this is he probably just went looking for some other person to be his victim. I was around 13 years old at the time of this story. One day I was walking to my psychiatrist's office for my weekly appointment. It's a half an hour walk and after dark. I enjoyed walking, especially at night when things were quiet and peaceful, with no one else around. No, I didn't live in a dangerous neighborhood, nor did my walk take me through any dangerous areas. As I'm about halfway to my destination, a black Cadillac comes driving down the street. Some people, both male and female, were sticking themselves halfway out the windows of the car and began taunting and jeering at me as they drove by. I ignored them and kept walking. About a minute or two later, the same car comes down the street again, and once again they taunt me. I have no idea who they are. Maybe they live in the neighborhood? I still ignore them and keep walking. Another minute or so goes by, and again they come driving down the street. Now I'm worried. They're circling the block over and over, deliberately focusing on me. As soon as they reach the corner, make their turn, and are out of sight, I duck behind some bushes in someone's front yard and wait. The car comes again down the street, this time not noticing me. They pass right by my hiding place and turn the corner. I assume they think I finally reached my destination, such as one of the houses on the block, and just went inside, and as a result they drove away. I thought wrong. Stupidly, I left my hiding place and began walking towards the office again. I should have stayed behind those bushes much longer because I hear the car approaching. They spot me and start taunting me again, then turn the corner. This time I run towards my destination, but I know I won't get far before they catch up with me again. So to that effect, I decide to hide again behind the bushes in front of an apartment building. This time, deciding to stay there for good until the thugs in the car give up searching for me. As I'm hiding there, behind the bushes for maybe about 30 seconds or so, the guy whose apartment it was comes outside. He asks what I'm doing hiding in his bushes. At first, he probably thought I was a burglar or something, but I explained how I was walking to my psychiatrist's office, and how I'm being followed and harassed by a group of people in a car, which was why I was hiding in his bushes. The guy can instantly tell from the tone of my voice and facial expressions that I'm telling him the truth. He can see how scared I am. Just then, the car came down the street and pulled up to the curb, directly in front of us. They looked at me and the guy I was with. As I'm looking at the car, I realize that it's missing a few people inside. The car doesn't look so full now. The guy I'm with just gives them a mean stare. He asks me, "You know them?" To which I reply, "No, I don't know them at all." As the car is sitting there, about 3 of them approach, walking from the other direction. The car was traveling east to west. Those 3 were walking on foot, from west to east. So that's why the car seemed less full. They were looking to escalate the situation. They weren't satisfied with just driving by and taunting me. They changed tactics. A few of them must have gotten out of the car up ahead and started walking towards me, while the ones in the car took the other turn around the block. Their plan now is to physically trap me in between themselves and the car, perhaps grab me and drag me into the car, for whatever reason. But seeing my tough guy guardian angel with me, the kids walking instead got into the car and took off. The guy offered to stay with me a little longer if I wanted to, or hang out in his apartment until I felt safe. I had a feeling that was the last time I was going to see those guys in their car, and I didn't want to be late for my appointment, so I thanked the man and headed on my way. The guy went back into his apartment and closed the door. I looked at the closed door and hoped that I didn't just make a mistake, because I was still scared. Thankfully, I was right about not seeing the car again, and the rest of my walk went just fine. I reached my psychiatrist's office and told my therapist about what happened. He insisted on calling the police, so the police came and took a report from me. That's the last I heard of it. Never saw that car, or those thugs, again. Although this story doesn't take place at night, I was alone in the remote countryside. I love to ride my bike along the country roads of a tiny town called Three Oaks, Michigan. On a recent Saturday, my wife was working and I had nothing to do, so I strapped my bike to the car and drove the hour to Three Oaks. I parked in the scenic downtown area and then rode out of town into the surrounding countryside. As I made my way deeper into the remote countryside, houses, businesses, and even cars grew increasingly scarce. Eventually, there was only an occasional house every half mile or so. Between the gravel roads that I pedaled down were vast cornfields and thickets of trees. It's on one of these back roads that a minivan drove past me. Within moments of it passing, it turned around and pulled up alongside me. I looked over and the passenger, who was a woman maybe in her mid to late 20s, was looking at me with her window down. The driver, a man of seemingly the same age, leaned over the woman and said with a big smile on his face, "Hey, do you know David Christ?" I thought for a brief second, but I didn't know who that was. I said that I didn't and apologized, and then pedaled on. The van sat for a moment and then pulled a U-turn, driving off in the direction they were originally heading. I thought nothing of the encounter. Maybe the driver was a friend of David, and he thought we had met through David or something. I don't know. At the time, I didn't think I had any reason to worry. I continued on my ride, turning down this road and heading north, and then turning down that road and heading east. I didn't have any agenda for my ride. I was just out to enjoy the summer day and wander through the relaxing countryside. Maybe 10 minutes later, I was on a different road and heading in a new direction when I saw the van again. We were heading towards each other, and I gave a smile and nod as I passed the driver. I remember thinking it was an odd coincidence that I should come across the same van again. He had a big smile on his face as he drove past. I continued taking a twisting, turning, and meandering path, taking this road and then turning onto that road, heading all directions. I was all over the place. Then I came across the van again. Again, they were heading in the same direction I was, and as I pulled alongside them, the driver rolled down his window and leaned out. He was in his late 20s, with a goatee and a baseball cap. I stopped my bike and looked at him, waiting for him to say something. But instead, he just looked at me for a good 30 seconds. 30 seconds doesn't sound like a long time, but if you flag down a stranger and then just look at them for that long, it felt like a lifetime. Finally, he spoke and said, "Hey, do you know David Christ?" This time there was no smile on his face. He stared at me and I was thinking to myself, is he joking? Does he really not remember asking me 20 minutes ago? Is he just being funny? After a moment, I told him I still don't know anyone by that name, and I pedaled off. It's at that time that I realized exactly how remote of an area I was in. I peered down the road and didn't see a house anywhere. I was surrounded by a cornfield on one side and a forest on the other. I looked over my shoulder and saw the van slowly driving down the road away from me. It couldn't be a coincidence that I came across this van 3 times. It made no sense. The only thing they could have been doing was just driving around. But then why would they stop and ask that same question? I was becoming a little more concerned. I began to head back toward the town center. I pedaled hard, and the gravel road ahead of me had a bend to the right. As I neared the bend, the van came around the corner. I gripped my pocket knife, which I always took with me on these kind of rides, just in case, and then realized all they would have to do is run me down with their van, and I would be in serious trouble. As the van drew closer, I was ready to jump off into the cornfields. They slowed down, and the driver rolled down his window and leaned out again. But this time I didn't stop riding. I increased my speed, even though I knew I could never outrun the van if they gave chase. I looked over my shoulder, and I saw the van sitting in the middle of the road. I took the right fork and continued on the gravel road until I could no longer see the van. Then I stopped. The road I was on split in two, with the right staying on the gravel path, and the left a smaller dirt trail. I got off my bike and crept along the cornfield until I was at its edge, and I peeked down the road I had just been on. The van was in the distance, driving away from me. I ran back to my bike, and then as soon as the van was entirely out of sight, I turned around and took the left fork along the dirt path. I rode as fast as I could, knowing that if the people in the van had nefarious things in mind, and they caught me on that path, that would be the time they'd attack. My ruse worked, or perhaps the van was never after me at all, as I made it the rest of the way to the town center, without seeing them again. When I got home later that day, I was still replaying the events in my head, and the name David Christ kept creeping through my mind. Was this someone famous? Like a musician? Should I have known him? I decided to Google the name. I tried a couple of different spellings for Christ, but it was the CRST one that revealed a chilling result. I came across a newspaper article from Knoxville, Tennessee. The article explained how a man named David Christ had turned himself in after stabbing another man at a gas station. The article included a photo of the criminal, and it was the man driving the van. I had a baseball cap and a few inches of a goatee, and it's the same man. I did an inmate search at the Knoxville County Prison, and there was no David Christ in the inmate population. Somehow, David had gotten out of prison in less than 2 years after stabbing the guy, and he had made his way to Michigan. Maybe he was never convicted, as I couldn't find any articles about the sentencing. So why was he driving along these back roads? Who was this silent woman in the passenger seat? And why the hell did he keep asking if I knew him? Do I know David Christ? I do now.